Okay. Yeah.
Big trouble.
That's new.
May I just say something, please?
Yeah, go on. Just muted yourself.
Yeah, I've taken my hand off the thing. I think that there are a number of examples, and there have been over the years that I can look back on, where there are elders within churches who are acting as lay leaders, and very good ones, and they're people whom the congregation trust and know, and who may preach, but who they are definitely leaders in the way that they support and work within the church and their elders.
Thank you. Did you want to say anything, Jamie, or shall we move on?
I don't think I've got a huge amount to add, but just to say, I think as Angela said, in many cases, the leadership of elders has sort of happened quite organically within churches, that somebody just has the right gifts in the right place and offers within the elders meeting a particular leadership role. What we've recognised in the synod, though, is that there are some instances where it is the right thing to do to recognise that as a separately recognised ministry of leadership, and that sometimes can be taking somebody who maybe has been an elder in one church and offering leadership then in another. Of course, that's in the case of Alex. So we have many elders who are offering leadership right across the denomination in all kinds of ways. And we're not the only synod that does this, but where it seemed appropriate, then we do give that extra recognition where somebody is the person that the church looks to as their leader. They are an elder and they're operating within that ministry in the United Reformed Church.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on. Actually, room 7 didn't say anything. Do you want to say something really quickly, someone from room 7?
Well, touched on Alex?
Well, we weren't able to reach a firm conclusion. There was some preference of scenario 1, but I don't think we understood all the ramifications. We also said we needed to develop leadership, and the other point that was made is that different churches are going to have very different needs. Community, looking after your elderly congregation, and youth work, of course, very important. So it might be very difficult to apportion the ministers across the group.
Thank you. I guess because we're looking at other roles, not just ministers, that might be some of the roles might fulfill some of those things that Alex mentioned there. Thank you. Okay, moving on then. So, lots of pages here. Okay. Yep, someone said something.
Thank you, Claire. Should we move on to the roadmap outline?
No, we've got quite a lot from mine first. Sorry.
Oh, you're still going.
I've only done the first bit.
Oh, right.
However, the rest might be a bit quicker. So yeah. So the question lots of churches ask is, what about finance? How much will it cost? Or how much more will it cost than what we're paying now? So that's often a concern for lots of churches when it comes to ministry. And before we look at any figures, can I just clarify that the stipend for stipendiary ministry is paid out of the M&M contributions. It's the ministry element, and includes pension and national insurance contributions. And that's separate to expenses, so which we'll come on to in a minute. But just to simplify it, each church contribution goes to synod for the ministry and mission, and then synod send the ministry element to national. I think I'm getting all this right. And then national pay ministers out of that. So if you're a small church only a few members paying a small amount, or a large church paying more than the cost of one minister, then those two different churches still would get a share of ministry. As we know, St Andrews at the moment have one full-time minister, but in the future, some churches that have a full-time minister might not be able to have one anymore. So they might be paying over what it costs, but they might still only be getting a share of a minister, because we're trying as a denomination to share ministry as a whole across the denomination. And in that sense, looking at those two scenarios, it doesn't matter really which one we choose, because the cost to the churches who are part of the partnership or who have that minister as a separate entity to kind of a grouping of just those churches who have that minister, they'll still be paying the same M&M. The figures we're going to look at as quickly as we can, with time marching on, are taken from the current M&M payments, I understand, but we are looking to July 2022, so they will be different by then. By then, my role is most likely to have come to an end, and so there will be, as I said earlier, 2 stipendiaries, Tim and the new minister. And I'll come to Alex, Angela and Jeff a little bit later on when we think about expenses. So I'm going to screen share again. That one. Next slide. Yeah, okay. Right, that looks quite complicated, doesn't it? So this shows the current M&M contributions. The current cost is £88 per member per year for mission and £345 per member per year for ministry when we've got a minister for that church. All churches pay the full mission cost. Only churches with ministry pay the full ministry cost. Churches without ministry pay roughly half the ministry cost, and churches join with other denominations, the LEPs, and we've got 2 here, don't pay the ministry cost if they've got a minister from another denomination. Simon Copley, our Synod Treasurer, has done some number crunching for us, which is this table has come out of. So to explain it a bit, after the church name, we have the current status of M&M, and this is Simon's wording here. So ministry, lay leader, vacancy or mission only. The middle column gives the actual figures of what each church currently pays based on the number of members. And as I said, there's zeros for LEPs. They don't pay the ministry part because they've already got Methodist oversight. The 4th column gives the change in cost for the ministry element, assuming the church will keep current ministry or have a share of the new minister. I apologise if something's just clicked up on the screen. Just got rid of it, that's good. And then the final column suggests not the new amount, because we don't know what the figures will be then in terms of how many members there'll be in the church, but it's kind of gives a sense of what it will be roughly. Just to go through the churches very quickly then, as quick as I can. Headingley will lose me. Oh, sorry, I've knocked it up a bit. That's it, back to that one. But we'll probably have a share of the new minister, so no change in cost. St Andrews will keep Tim. Excuse me. And if the churches do have a team ministry, then they will also have a share of, be a part of the ministry team. But there's no change there for St Andrews in ministry cost, even if we do have a team. The URC in South Leeds will keep Alex. And as I understand it, they have an agreement already made that although they'll be able to draw on the new team, at this point in time, while Alex is there, there'll be no change in ministry cost. Excuse me. Steinbeck will keep Angela as long as she feels she wants to continue, as well as being able to draw on the team. Despite Angela being non-stipendiary, they had an agreement way back to pay full M&M and will continue to do so. So there's no change in ministry cost. And I have to say their generosity has helped out a lot of other churches. West Park is currently not marked as not having ministry now, but as we know, actually they've had the benefit of Jeff's ministry as a non-stipendiary over the last nearly 4 years as an interim minister. But they've only been paying half of the ministry element of M&M since Anne Lewitt moved on. So that element, if they have a part of a ministry team, or if the new minister is named for them, that element will double. The ministry element almost double. It's not quite double, but almost double. And similarly with Wigton Moor, currently marked as having no ministry, have only been paying half of the ministry element since Peter Clarkson moved on. So they currently have Tim as synod companion, but their ministry element, if we have a team or somebody's named for them, will also almost double. But before going on to the final two churches, just to say, if West Park and Wigton Moor would struggle to pay the extra amount, there may be other ways to work it out. For example, maybe possible to have a transitional period, gradually upping what is paid, say over 3 years, to be worked out with Synod, or we could work out as a Leeds Partnership how much the total ministry element would be for all our churches, and ask churches to offer what they could contribute to the pot to help out those churches over the current levels that we pay, in a spirit of generosity, remembering that ministry will benefit us all. Okay, so to the final two, Christchurch Halton will have 25% of the new minister, and it's been carefully worked out what they pay, what they will pay, will be roughly what they pay now to the circuit, and plus the ministry, plus the mission element of M&M. And then Beeston Hill will, if they'd like to, have a share of the ministry team, but will retain their Methodist oversight until 2025, I think it is, for now. So their contribution will remain the same. So that's a lot of information to take in. But moving on. Oh no, actually, before we move on, I'll stop share a minute and ask if there are any questions, and then we'll move on to expenses. Yep, Jenny.
Is it worth saying we're going to circulate the slides so people don't have to try and take it all in at once?
Yep, good. Yeah, it's a lot to take in. I can't see the other half of the screen, so is there anyone else? No one's got their hand up. Okay, so moving on then to ministerial expenses, and I've got another, I'll share screen again. Okay, so I'll talk us through this. Currently for the stipendiary ministers, there's kind of a list of fairly rough figures, but based partly on Simon Copley's figures that he gave the steering group, and partly on the Headingley St Columba figures, which I have access to, so I thought I'd use those. But please note that this assumes a stipendiary minister lives in a manse, and as ministry is being shared, we also need to think about how we share the costs. So for two stipendiary ministers that we're thinking of, the total expenses could come to 17,000. And then add in the two non-stipendiaries and the elder in pastoral charge, or I can't remember the official title we're calling, Alex as a lay leader. They're all half-time, I've said half-time, that's not strictly true actually, all part-time, who I believe all only claim office and travel expenses. And I've estimated that, or actually that was estimated by Simon Copley as 3,000. Sorry, no, I've got that wrong. That was estimated, I think, at, yeah, it's on the, sorry, on the list as 2,000 for office and travel. But if they're not full-time, then that would probably be 1,000 each, making it 3,000. So that would bring, I put the grand total there wrong as well, 22. It should be 20,100, my apologies. I'll alter that before I send it round. I'll stop share there. So yeah, so we're looking at total expenses of around about 20,000 shared out in some way to be decided. Could be assumed that Christchurch will pay 25% of one minister and the rest shared out. St Andrews may want to continue to pay just Tim's expenses as they currently do. And other churches may want to continue paying expenses for Angela, Jeff and Alex. That brings the figure to possibly roughly 75% of the expenses for one stipendiary minister only, which comes to about 6,375, shared between the churches that don't currently pay expenses to anyone in the ministry team. But there are other models we can go for, and that's something to be discussed. With my own expenses, 50% at Headingley and 50% shared between the churches, all the treasurers got together to work that out. And that's what we're proposing this time at a meeting, to look at various ways we could do that. And I'm initially going to invite all church treasurers, and if a church hasn't got a church treasurer, somebody else, to come to a meeting in July with myself and Simon Copley to talk through those different, what I've presented today to start with, and then to talk maybe in more detail. And I think initial conversation we certainly need to have at this stage, but people want to be asking other questions and giving other thoughts. And by kind of like the early, September time, that needs to be put, probably by the time we put the proposals out, actually, we need to put that, those ideas into more clarification for exactly what we're proposing. Can I open it to any questions at this stage? Then I've got a short bit to finish on. Can't see anyone with their hands up. So just to say then, that's the ministry cost then is the M&M and then the expenses. But finally, just to say a little bit about other roles, not to say what roles we're thinking of at the moment because time's moved on. But if we do form a ministry team to include other roles, those roles will need to be paid for too. And that's a bit of the puzzle we're not clear on yet, but we hope and pray that everything will be a lot clearer after we've had the meet and greets and we can put the real figures together for later on. And then just finally to say, Simon Copley looked at the assets we have in all our churches in Leeds. And I'm not going to screen share that, but there's quite a lot. In fact, he reckoned that if we came together with all our finances, all our assets rather, and acted generously, this is just an example, we could actually finance a combination of 4 full-time other workers around Leeds, or 3 and 2 part-time, or whatever combination that might be needed of different roles. And we could finance that for 10 years. So isn't that a fantastic idea? Not that we haven't got other things to spend our assets on, like roofs and lots of other things probably as well. But if we did act generously and pulled at least some of our assets then we could finance some of the other workers. Or maybe a church who has more could offer to finance a worker and give that person to the whole of the group. Wouldn't that be wonderful? So I'll leave it there and back to Moira. I have finished now.
Yeah, sorry for trying to stop you early, Claire. I'm anxious to get through the agenda. So we move on to the roadmap of how we're going to go about things, and Jenny's covering that for us.
Right, so as Claire has said, our aim is to call a Minister of Word and Sacraments to Leeds to be inducted by July 2022. As Claire also said, in principle, in late 2019, early 2020, most of the churches gave in principle support to the idea of a Leeds Partnership served by a ministry team. And after that, the plan was to hold a meeting with 1 or 2 reps from each church to discuss the proposals further, so we knew where we were going. Then the pandemic struck, and we had quite a gap. But things have moved on in that time, and as Claire also said, we're now in a position where the majority of mission and care group churches approved a proposal that URC minister be called to Leeds to serve alongside a Methodist minister at Christchurch Holson, and also to serve other churches in the mission and care group. It's important to remember that, because it's the individual churches. This mission and care group can't actually make any decisions. As a meeting, we can't make decisions. We always have to go back to our individual churches. And so what I'm going to talk about now is how we plan to reach the point where we can have a minister in Leeds in August, to start hopefully in August 2022. And that all the way along has got to come and go between the ideas going back to the churches for approval. So as we said, the arrangement at Christchurch, we hope will start in August 2022. In order for that to happen, we really need to have the profile for a URC minister to Synod Pastoral Committee in October of this year. So that's not actually that long when we've got to come and go all the time. So what we've got here is a roadmap of how we hope to get there, and I'm going to outline that to you, and particularly highlighting the things that each of us needs to share with our church, our own church. So the first thing is the meet and greets, and we're hoping that these will happen by the end of starting at the end of June, when hopefully we will be able to meet in person, and they'll go on till the end of July. Most churches probably now have a date when the moderator, along with Claire and another member of the steering group, will be visiting. This is a chance for as many people as possible to meet Jamie and to share with him and the steering group their experiences of lockdown, how this has affected their church's mission and ministry priorities, and their thoughts about the best way forward. These meetings really replace the meeting that we'd planned for church reps about the partnership. Instead of asking reps to come to a meeting with Claire and the steering group, Claire, the steering group, and Jamie, a big added bonus there, are coming to each church and giving many more people the chance to share their views. So that's really the next step from here, the meet and greet meetings. Then, as Claire says, hopefully in July, there will be a meeting for church treasurers. As she said earlier, one of the responses we got from the churches about the partnership pre-pandemic was that although people might support the idea of a partnership in principle, nobody was prepared to commit to it without knowing the costs involved, which is perfectly reasonable. Simon Copley, the Synod Treasurer, as Claire said, has done a lot of work on various ways of funding ministry across Leeds, and he will be at that meeting. He'll be able to answer questions and explain the different funding options, which will include such things as grants for other people should we employ lay people within a team. So it's not all, we don't actually have to take it all from our income or assets. There are other ways as well. Then on July the 13th, there will be a mission and care group service. And this will be an important opportunity for us to worship together. Hopefully, we might even be able to do it in a church, sitting near to each other. But it will also, we would hope that even if we are in church, we will be able to share it on Zoom as well, so that everybody can, as many people as possible, can take part. And it will be an opportunity to pray about the way forward. From that, and coming out of the meet and greets, we by early September, firm proposals will be circulated to the churches. Claire will be collating the responses, and then the steering group will put together firm proposals for ministry across Leeds, which will be circulated to all the churches. And at the Mission and Care Group meeting on the 8th of September, that will be an opportunity to clarify any details of the proposals before they are discussed at church meetings. So as you can see, as I've said earlier, the church meetings are very important. We can't make decisions, the church meetings have to make the decisions. And so we will need each church to have a church meeting sometime in September, because by the end of September we will need to have the answer from the churches. So you need to hopefully schedule a meeting in December after the first week, so that when the proposals come out, you can discuss the proposals and hopefully approve the proposals, and then get the answer back to us by the end of September. By the first week in October, so this is very tight, we will need to produce a profile in order to call a minister. If you remember, before Claire came, we put together a profile. There was an element, part of it was from Headingley St Columba's, fairly sort of standard profile of for calling a minister to pastoral charge of a church. And then we put together a joint profile for all the other churches in the ministry, the Mission and Care Group. And the sort of profile we put together, I suppose, will depend to an extent on whether we've gone for calling a minister to particular churches but not to a team, or if we're going down the partnership route and forming a team. If we have agreed to a team, which is what we were agreeing in principle before the pandemic, then there will be a page for each church in that, which we would like to include a photo or more than one photo and information about the church. those churches for whom that person might be the named minister, there may be more detail needed from those churches. But whatever happens, we will need information from the churches involved by the first week in October. I can't imagine many churches producing something in a week or so from the end of September when the decisions are made to the beginning of October. So you might like to start thinking about that well before September. And we have to submit the profile to Synod Pastoral Committee before the 15th of October. From there, the profile goes to the moderators meeting, if assuming the Synod Pastoral Committee agree. It's added to the vacancy list and sent to all ministers in November. And we would then hope that interest will be shown by ministers in January or February. An introduction to the pastorate would begin possibly in March and be completed hopefully by Easter, so that the new minister would arrive at the end of July next year. It all sounds quite straightforward when I say it like that, but there's a lot of things involved in that. And just a quick summary of what each of us needs to do within our own church in the time ahead. So what we need to do is to firstly encourage as many people as possible to attend your meet and greet with the moderator Claire, and share their views on the future of ministry in Leeds. An opportunity for every single person to share their views, so encourage people to come along and make the most of that opportunity. Secondly, ensure that your treasurer or someone with an interest in finance, if they can't make it, can attend the meeting with Simon Copley, the Synod Treasurer. Thirdly, schedule a church meeting in September to discuss the firm proposals for ministry across Leeds. Fourthly, work on your church's part of the profile for a new minister. And lastly, but by no means least, encourage everyone to pray individually, as a church, and as a mission and care group, that we may discern the way that God wants us to move forward into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Are there any burning questions at that stage? If there aren't, I'll move on to Sheena, who's going to talk about the meet and greets, please.
Well, Jenny has said a lot about the meet and greets, so there's not an awful lot more I can say. But I think one of the main things, well, there's two main things for me. One is to meet Jamie, because Jamie joined us. That's Jamie waving at us now. When Jamie joined us, obviously, he's not been able to go around and visit all the churches, or any churches, I don't think, probably, since he became moderator here. Whilst we've seen him on Zoom, it's not the same, as we all know, it's not the same as seeing somebody on Zoom as it is actually meeting them. So it is a really good opportunity. So that, I think, actually, apart from, obviously, we've got to talk about what the other purpose of the meeting is, but when you talk to people, come and meet our new moderator. He's great. You know, have you seen him on Zoom? He's been leading some services. He's maybe could come and lead services at your church. You know, be excited about it. This is great. You know, this is really good. Oh, and the other thing he's going to talk about is this new venture we've got, which is the team ministry. And if they kind of start to look like, oh yeah, we heard about this before. No, this is different. We've come up with some different ideas, and it's really different because we've got Christchurch Holton getting 25% ministry, etc., etc. And so, you know, be enthusiastic and really try and advertise the meeting, that your church secretaries will have been told when the meeting is going to be, and then that's going to be communicated to everybody in the churches, and really try and, you know, bring somebody along to a meeting for a change. Just say, let's go to a meeting, because we can, because we can actually go to a meeting. This is going to be exciting, guys, because we haven't been able to go to a meeting for a long time. So sell it in the right way, that this is something that's good to go to. And really, as I say, advertise it. And the other thing is, when we come to talk to you, because it's going to be Jamie and Claire and either myself or Terry or Jenny that goes around the churches, and we want to listen to what the churches have to say, what the churches want. So if you can find out beforehand a little bit about talking to people, what it is that you are looking for in terms of ministry, that would be really helpful. And so, yeah, to get your views, and then we can move forward. And as Jenny said, we're really working together as a partnership in Leeds, and the future is looking hopefully bright. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheena. The next item, I think, is just to remind all churches that they received a questionnaire about the Ministry and Mission Enabler Review. And if you haven't returned it, please, could you do so? Is there anything else to say about that? No.
Not from my point of view, unless Sadie or John need to say anything.
Chair, thank you very much for this opportunity. It's really good to have met you all this evening, and really just to say the questionnaire is really short, really just looking for one-word answers, and shouldn't take you too long to complete. And also want to say thank you to the churches, not to make the rest of you feel guilty, but thank you very much to the churches who've already completed theirs. It would really help us to give other people's impression of the role, and give us a sense of a whole church responding, rather than just those who speak the loudest. So it'd be really good to hear from you all, and thank you very much on behalf of John and myself.
Thank you, Zadie. The next item just says prayer on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Claire's dealing with that.
That's me. Yeah. Yeah, it's an idea that's come out of the steering group for prayer. As Jenny said, we need to be praying for the future. And coming out of the successful Lent, Advent and then Lent groups where we all shared together, we thought it'd be really good to continue sharing and to share in prayer. So to have a group across the churches, probably on Zoom to start with at least, of those who would like to pray for the future. Several of our churches have done Leading a Church into Growth, and from that is to pray for our church's mission as well, to pray for the future and to pray for our mission. So I will put a date out, I think might be the easiest thing, and those who are interested, please log on. I think that's going to be simplest. Okay, unless anyone else has a good idea.
Thank you, Claire. Leads us to any other business. We're not doing a going around the churches and asking what everybody's doing at this stage, because we knew we were going to have a busy meeting. So it's really an item for anything that is urgently needed to be raised, please. Nobody's sent anything beforehand, so everybody's nice and quiet. I'll just look on the other screen. I can't see any hands up. In which case, the date of the next meeting, Claire's already mentioned, or Jenny mentioned it, the 13th of July at 7:30. And obviously more information will be sent out telling you where, hopefully where it is, which won't be necessarily in front of the screen. So I think that brings us to the end of everything we need to cover tonight. Unless there's anything anybody is going to suddenly shout up. So we'll end our meeting with a reading and prayer. I'm still with the Holy Habits book for the first bit, reading a section from near the end where it says, "Follow me." Follow me, says Jesus, two simple yet life-changing, world-changing words. Dare to dream what you can be and do, as renewed by the Spirit, you follow afresh the one who loves you, calls you and walks with you. Dare to dream of how your home, church, community, workplace, world can be transformed as you live out the holy habits in partnership with the holy community of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Follow me, says Jesus. It's time to take the next step. And I'm going to read the Catch the Vision prayer, which some of you may remember from some years ago, because it seems to fit with tonight. And after which, it would be nice if we could unmute and we'll say the grace together. So let us listen to the Catch the Vision prayer first. May the Spirit of the Lord rest upon us. May the call of God sustain us as we seek to be God's people, transformed by the gospel, announcing God's news to the poor, proclaiming freedom for those in prisons of wealth, poverty, disease, and disorder, committed to making a difference to the world's kingdoms. May we deploy our resources as the Spirit guides, not shirk difficult decisions about the priority of mission. Pledge ourselves anew to work with all our fellow Christians and use the gifts of all God's people so that all may be filled with the spirit of healing, justice, and peace. Amen. So if you like to unmute yourself. We'll attempt to say the grace together in unison to show how united we are as a mission and care group. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ,
love of God,
Love of
Love
God,
and
love of
fellowship,
fellowship of the Holy Spirit,
the Holy Spirit,
with us all,
forevermore.
Amen.
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 Amen. Amen.